schooling, healthcare, and so on and so forth.
Excellent. Thank you. David.
Thank you, Chair. And in fact, when Dr. Walsh kindly provides the note that my colleague Baroness May has just asked for, perhaps as well as population density, you can give us some information about infrastructure as well in comparable recipient countries, if that's not imposing too much on you. Can I ask you further, before I know your colleagues will be answering questions a little later on, but Dr. Walsh, can I ask you about safe and legal routes? We saw over the weekend, for instance, Tim Lawson, Member of Parliament, talking about the importance of creating a new structure, maybe with a cap, he said, of perhaps 20,000 a year. It doesn't really matter what the number is in some senses. It's the principle of creating a new safe and legal route. It's a point that's regularly canvassed in both houses, whenever we've considered things like the Nationality and Borders Act. It's something that has been rejected previously by government. Can you tell the committee what exactly is a safe and legal route?
So safe and legal routes is actually an umbrella term that usually refers to official, so sanctioned immigration schemes that provide access to the UK for humanitarian reasons. So that means people are able to come to the UK with legal permission, and they take various forms, and the UK has a number of these, which I'd be happy to elaborate on. But broadly speaking, it's quite a broad definition, but that's really what we're referring to.
But if you took a case like, for instance, a woman who'd been sprayed with chemicals in a country like Iran, is there a safe and legal route for someone like that to come to the United Kingdom by way of?
Not with any high chance of success. I mean, the main safe and legal route that people refer to as refugee resettlement, but this is for individuals either in urban centres or refugee camps registered with the UN, and it's a lottery.
So the answer is no?
So the chance of actually being resettled to the country that you desire is extremely low through that route, because the demand for being resettled vastly outstrips the supply. Less than 1% of those registered as refugees with the UN are actually resettled, and you don't have any choice in the country you move to. So really there's virtually zero chance. They would have to come to the UK and avail themselves of the ordinary regular asylum system, and there's no legal way to come to the UK for the specific purpose of seeking asylum, which compels a regular route.
What percentage of refugees actually arrive in the United Kingdom through safe and legal routes then?
Let me see. So I have some figures on that here. So in 2022, there were 287,000 people, roughly, that were granted permission to enter or stay in the UK under safe and legal routes. And the vast majority of those, 94%, were under the Ukraine schemes and the Hong Kong BNO schemes. Now, that has changed quite dramatically over time. Before those routes, it was actually typically the case that more people would come under the asylum application process. So if we take, for example, 2019, before the pandemic, before Hong Kong and Ukraine, it was 54%, so about 15,000 out of 28,000 that came through the regular asylum application process, as opposed to refugee resettlement and refugee family reunion. That's dramatically shifted now. So if we look at 2022, it's just 6% that have been given status under the asylum application process. The remaining 94% have come under safe and legal routes, and mostly under the Hong Kong and Ukraine routes.
Thank you. Thank you for being so helpful with those figures. But can I just push you on one further point, and that's the Afghan scheme. What percentage does that make up? What sort of numbers have come in under that scheme, and do you think it's been a success?
Yeah, so that makes up 2% of all of those who have come last year. And it's really, apart from those who moved initially following the evacuation of Kabul, it hasn't really gotten up off the ground. And there are also challenges in the statistics. They're currently being compiled, So it's actually quite difficult to get a handle on exactly how many people have been granted status under the Afghan route. I estimate it at about, and this is not in 2022, but since they opened, about 12,500 have been granted permanent status under either the Afghan relocation and assistance policy or the resettlement scheme. Now, there are some indications that the resettlement scheme is, not just the low numbers that have come since, but we also see quite large numbers of Afghans travelling to the UK by small boat. And this really feeds back into the point I was making earlier about the inability of refugee resettlement. Really, you would have to expand it very, very substantially, and even then it's not clear that it targets the same population that would actually travel, that are desperate to reach the UK, and to do so would claim asylum, perhaps after an irregular arrival.
Thank you very much indeed.
Lord Dalaki, I think you wanted to come in there.
Dr. Walsh, can I just pursue one of the questions that Lord Alton has asked? There are no such thing as safe and legal routes to enter this country at the present time. Is it possible, where no structures exist, to go to the British Embassy, British Council or British High Commission to seek admission to this particular country as a refugee?
Yeah, so that option is not currently open, but that is a proposal that's quite popular among refugee and human rights NGOs, allowing people to either apply for a humanitarian visa at a British consulate abroad, which would enable them to come to the UK without needing to take a dangerous route, where they could then claim asylum on arrival, or to allow people to claim asylum abroad and then have their claim processed abroad. That raises some additional practical questions about, well, where are they going to live and be accommodated while that is being processed? But currently that route that you've described does not exist.
Thank you.
Caroline Johnson.